So, the Park Service of New South Wales just announced another addition to their catalogue of hikes throughout the state, and unfortunately, the narrative is all too familiar. A 42km, allegedly 4-day hike with a trail that might as well be a road, actually I think it is a road, tent platforms galore, and a price of admission of $173 per night. What the f*** is happening to hiking in Australia? I've got a lot to say about this. Not this hike in particular, but the narrative that it spreads. Quite frankly, these modern hiking trails are built with the intention of promoting ecotourism, not hiking. It's an abomination that eats away at our protected areas, funded by our taxpayers for the interests of private businesses. But it's more than just about money. With each new trail on offer, it seems that there is a pattern, a theme that all of these new hiking trails seem to share. This theme encompasses not just the hiking trails themselves, but a string of consequential shifts to the way that we approach hiking in Australia. Ecotourism is negatively impacting the identity of hiking in Australia, and it all begins with the trails themselves. Hiking, to a large extent, is about exploration. Not knowing what's around the next corner, and surmounting a series of challenges to reach a destination. It's also largely about a connection to nature, to feel immersed as a trail naturally weaves itself through the landscape. A trail that acts as an extension to the environment, formed through natural means rather than being blatantly forced and engineered. After all, hiking isn't described in the same vein as walking. There's a distinct difference. That difference, to me, is largely to do with the environment that you're walking through. You want to feel isolated from the modern world, to feel a sense of adventure. Modern hiking trails, to me at least, feel completely devoid of these characteristics. Trails that are formed through natural means are often those that connect us deeply with the environment. A game trail, as renowned Australian mountaineer Tim McCartney-Snape puts it in his excellent article on the topic, and the article that has inspired this video. There are soulful walking trails, and there are ones that aren't. Soulful ones are the magical ones that resonate with our origins, that calm the mind and invite wonder. They are the ones that mimic game trails. The ones that meander unobtrusively through the landscape, gradually revealing the way. The ones that have a natural, uneven, ever-changing surface. When hiking trails begin to share more and more characteristics of urban environments, there's a clear problem. The replacement of natural imperfections with over-engineered precision, exchanging rock and soil for boardwalks and pavement, prioritising functionality over fun. That is what is meant when we say that hiking is losing its soul. What do I think is driving this change? Ecotourism, like any industry, is motivated by turning a profit. These modern hiking trails are designed to appeal to a mass demographic, one that is much larger than the small user base of experienced and self-reliant hikers. This in turn commodifies our national parks and wilderness areas, as it is the superficial characteristics that attract the most people. The better the scenery, the easier the marketing, the higher the profit. When the goal is to drive thousands of visitors into particularly sensitive environments, vast infrastructure becomes a necessity. Trails formed through natural means obviously cannot sustain high amounts of foot traffic without serious environmental consequences. The DNA of these ecotourism developments in Australia can be traced back to the highly regarded overland track in Tasmania, a hike largely influenced by the success of ecotourism in New Zealand. However, the overland track is one that executes the idea fairly gracefully, retaining most of the charm of the Central Highlands in Tasmania. The overland track, and by extension the Cradle Mountain Lake St Clair National Park, is an industry in itself, one that various state governments in Australia have sought to replicate ever since. Each subsequent development follows the same structure of the overland track to varying degrees of severity, with most succumbing further and further to the influence of ecotourism. More infrastructure, less wilderness, more price gouging, and less fun. Besides profit, there is another factor that I believe has an equally large role in driving the spread of ecotourism into hiking in Australia. That factor would be accessibility. Hiking shouldn't be accessible. Not in the modern inclusive sense of the word, the one that seeks to urbanise natural areas. Hiking needs to be accessible for it to act as an efficient business model. We know that these walks are designed in a way so that anyone can access them with minimal effort. With a catch. The physical barrier of accessing the outdoors is now replaced with a financial barrier. All of these overdeveloped walks are locked behind a hefty price tag, marginalising low-income walkers and enforcing strict walking regulations that are often unappealing to self-sufficient walkers. Some trails may have loopholes in the fine print, like the abomination of attracted as the Three Capes in Tasmania, but nonetheless, why are self-sufficient walkers being actively punished as a user base? It isn't entirely about accessibility, it's about specific accessibility, making these walks appeal only to a certain demographic. The demographic who will pay to put their needs above that of conservation, and above those of us who work hard on ourselves to be able to access these challenging areas through merit alone. The price of accessibility is $173 per night, and the destruction of our wild places. The as natural as possible hiking trails, the heart and soul of the activity itself, aren't within the interest of land managers, governments, or private businesses, but they are within ours. I've subscribed to a different interpretation of accessibility. I think most people misunderstand the word, defined as the quality of being able to be entered or used by everyone. Hiking exists largely as an accessible activity. Many people of varying degrees of physical fitness are able to participate. For most people, the only factor that limits what they're able to achieve is the effort that they put into the activity. It isn't that you can't access a trail, it's that you aren't willing to work on yourself, your skills, fitness, experience, so as you can. The problem is that this approach is challenging. It's difficult. It requires discipline, effort, and determination. And it also reaps no financial reward for governments or private businesses. The barrier to entry for most difficult hiking trails is time and experience. But most people have neither, yet they want the reward without putting in any of the effort. And modern hiking trails are able to deliver upon this. These modern hiking trails roll out the proverbial red carpet. They remove all need for personal development and essentially provide short-term gratification, sidestepping what would potentially be months or perhaps years of effort. No longer rising to the challenge is lowered and lowered and lowered until it's benign. And this has consequences. It has consequences for the environment, for the wider trail network, and the hiking community in general. The methodology behind the development of modern hiking trails is one that is best applied to urban environments rather than national parks and wilderness areas. If a set of stairs is too difficult to climb, you might build an elevator. If a trail is too difficult, then you might as well tear up the landscape, install a wide paved trail, build luxurious huts, and make sure that there are trail markers every 5 meters just in case the highway of a trail wasn't obvious enough. Some argue that these developments are positive for the environment as they safeguard against the effects of increased visitation. But the fact is that these developments facilitate the increased visitation in the first place. The more accessible the environment, the more infrastructure is required to protect it. The more infrastructure, the more accessible it becomes, attracting more people. I call this the accessibility infrastructure feedback loop. And the summit walk of Mount Kosciuszko is a very clear example of this. I don't think we should be treating our national parks and reserves with the same thought as we would with a shopping mall. Not every mountain needs to be wheelchair accessible. Installing a highway of a trail through a wilderness area is essentially the same thing. It can completely transform the environment through which it passes, which is the opposite to what a natural trail achieves. One that assimilates into the environment, becoming a part of it rather than one that defines it. Hiking trails don't have to abide by the same strict safety and accessibility regulations that urban developments do. Safety is the responsibility of the individual. This bubble wrap approach to trail development is ultimately harmful in the long run as it teaches unpreparedness. There is a place for these developments to exist within Australia's network of hiking trails. No issue can be resolved in fairness without compromise. Modern hiking trails, when executed with grace and with respect to the environment, can provide value outside of subjective measurements like fun and quality of the activity. What is fun for a beginner hiker isn't going to be the same as what is fun for an experienced hiker. The point is that neither of these user bases should be prioritised. All demographics should be catered to in a manner that remains within the interests of national parks and wilderness areas. This latter point is of particular importance. We have to maintain the character of our natural areas. There are hikes that follow this ecotourism formula that genuinely do offer an inclusive experience that can be enjoyed by the majority of the community. The overland track being the best example of this. The overland track keeps largely to a natural path, going on boardwalks when only environmentally necessary. The huts are available to be used by everyone, and you can even walk the track in the off-season completely for free. Better still are the upgrades that were made to the Frenchman's Cap track. The trail remains completely free, and the upgrades were primarily to combat erosion and improve facilities for hikers. Rather than focusing on the creation of new walking trails, projects that take many years and many millions of dollars worth of funding, even a small percentage of the budget that's allocated towards these modern developments could go into restoring the existing network of hiking trails across Australia. Yet budgets continue to be expended entirely upon ecotourism pipe dreams. In Victoria, for example, our network of trails is maintained largely through a volunteer base without any funding or support from Parks Victoria. The trail network in Victoria is far too large for this small volunteer base to adequately maintain without support, and the overall hiking experience in Victoria suffers because of this. I'm not advocating for the creation of new walking trails that follow a formula that I like in particular as an experienced walker. I don't think that we should be creating new walking trails at all. We have so many walking tracks, at least throughout Victoria, and I'm sure that this is the case throughout other states in Australia, that we should be focusing on restoring this network. Even iconic walking trails such as the Hannell Spur track in New South Wales took many years before a volunteer base came and cleared the track again. I'm sure that there is a plethora of forgotten walking trails that can offer amazing experiences that have just been forgotten to time. It is hard to imagine that any meaningful change will be made to the status quo. However, the outlook seems to be improving ever so slowly. More and more people are protesting this overdevelopment of our wilderness areas. People are looking for increasingly more adventurous experiences that these curated modern trails can't offer. As a community, it's within our interests to campaign for a more holistic approach to trail management and creation in the future. We need to promote a wide range of experiences rather than a single experience that is designed primarily within the interests of government and private businesses. They have to genuinely support conservation rather than degrading the environments they reside in. But more than all else, hiking in Australia needs to regain its adventurous soul. Our unique environment and extensive wilderness areas offer experiences that cannot coexist with intrusive and over-engineered urban pathways. I could go on and on and on this subject, but I'm going to wrap things up here for now. If you have any thoughts on this topic, please leave them in the comment section below. I'm always interested in learning of different perspectives and discussing them. Otherwise, if you're after inspiration for soulful, adventurous hiking trails, then check out my back catalogue of videos and make sure that you're subscribed for many more to come in the future. That's all for now. Take care, and I'll see you when I see you.